Hello, this is Namarikze. Koncho Nandro, your friend. And I just wanted to talk briefly. It'd be good to clarify some Buddhist philosophy for some people that might be wondering. A lot of what I've said has been intentionally for people that are already kind of in the game. But if you need a quick explanation or you need help explaining this to someone else, let's talk about what it means, what Buddhists mean by everything is an illusion. So, first of all, everything appears within awareness. And this is the same whether you're awake or whether you're in a dream. So, when you're in a dream, other people talk to you, there are surroundings, you have like forests and trees and such. All those things are within your mind. And that's how you're aware of them, because they are within the scope of your awareness. This is exactly the same in the waking state. What is different between the waking state and not is there is an extra feeling of viscerality, which is not common in dreams. Some dreams do have quite a bit of physicality to them, and it can happen, but it's very rare. But in reality, there's, you knock things and you feel them very strongly. Secondly, there's continuity. Like you seem to have the same room, the same people, the same world that you had when you went to sleep last night. But it's all within your own mind. You can't prove that anything exists externally. You have to rely on assumption in order to do so, and that's just kind of a knowing circular philosophy, but it's a point that Buddhists will make, is that it's all within the scope of your awareness. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be aware of it. And we're all assuming that there's a difference between dreams and reality, but nobody can prove that. Second of all, and more importantly, is the thought or the philosophy of interdependence, that everything, first of all, is based on a cause. So, from a tree, from a seed comes a tree, and so there is a continuity of one thing to the next, right? From fire, we get ash, from a young man, we get an old man. Things change into one another. Things seem to transform. And it's this ability for things to transform that is the main reason why the Buddhists call everything an illusion. Because there's this exercise in Buddhism where things are broken down further and further into smaller and smaller pieces. So in this case, when you're looking at interdependence and you're elucidating the illusory quality of appearances, whatever exists in the moment, you start by looking at what it was before. So you go to a seed and you look at the seed, and then you go, okay, the seed becomes a sprout. And you go like, at what point does the seed become a sprout? And you can break that moment down further and further and further and further. And so, in fact, what you discover is that it's an exercise of labeling, right? You're settling on a label, like, oh, this is the moment when it's a sprout, this is the moment that it's a seed, but then there's this kind of like third moment of sprout seed that actually exists, and then there's like early sprout seed, late sprout seed, and then you can cut this down and cut this down and cut this down, and the point is that things, because things change, they are indefinite, right? So nothing can be counted on to remain stable. Things are relatively stable, but they, in fact, are always changing. And because of this changing ability, we come to what the undergirding medium of change is, which is emptiness or space. And particularly emptiness, the notion that things can change means that they are not definitely one thing or another. If things were definitely one thing or the other, they could not change. This is the Buddhist logic. If they were to change, then you could not say that they were absolutely one thing. So if you look at a wooden table, you don't go, oh, that's a tree, right? It's become a table. And so you say like, oh, it came from a tree, or it was a tree at one time, but then that means that the tree itself was a temporary appearance. It was a condition that changed. And so it's, although we can look at it, as I said, in the first degree of there being a dreamlike quality to things where you like really can't establish reality. And that, again, I think it's sort of like annoying to most people. Like it's not really a satisfactory logical space, even though I feel like it's an absolute fact. It's not helpful for like people just coming into things who haven't had some meditative experience. More the latter of understanding that emptiness, the emptiness of absolute reality, right? So in other words, that there is no solidity to anything. Everything is sort of fluid, moving through time. Means everything is mutable, and since everything is mutable, then nothing can be absolute. And so if you were to have a procession of time where things change, then they cannot absolutely become or be one thing. So it's like originally you have, the Big Bang, and then the Big Bang, it gives rise to various cosmic dust, and then that dust settles and it becomes atoms, and those atoms congeal and become stars, and those stars then let out kind of the refuse of their initial atomic kind of basic hydrogen and other small atoms into larger molecules and larger atomic or heavier atomic weights, and those congeal and become asteroids or comets, and those asteroids and comets then congeal and become planets, and those planets, if we're looking at Earth, it's sort of like a fiery lava rock, and then that fiery lava rock begins to cool, and it the water vapor in the air then congeals and becomes lakes, rivers, oceans, and you get life, and trees give and single-celled organisms give rise to organics like plants, and so on and so forth. You can like extrapolate this, and so things become other things, and so things therefore in the long scope of time could be called illusions, right? So if we press fast forward on life and everything is moving at extremely accelerated speed, right? If we're moving through the timeline very quickly, well then everything starts to, it's the illusory quality starts to become obvious, right? You see the seed, and then the sprout, and then the tree, and then the tree rots and becomes soil, and that soil gives rise to mushrooms, and those mushrooms get eaten and they become part of an animal. And so you understand that there's like this, oh, things are just kind of like popping up and then just immediately becoming something else. And the only reason we don't kind of experience this illusory quality is because of the speed by which we experience time. And I assume, and my theory is that, different beings experience time in different kind of at different rates. So I always talk about hummingbirds. They must. I sincerely believe hummingbirds must see everything in what we would call slow motion. Both because of their heart rate and just the ability for them to articulate. So finally, their consciousness must be hyper aware of every millisecond in order to articulate every little thing they're doing. And so their reality might in fact be even slower, and things might be moving much slower. And this may also be connected to the lifetime of animals. This is all really just kind of philosophical nonsense extrapolation. But the point is you can just simply explain to people that on a fast enough timeline, mountains become sand. And so if you sped everything up, then nothing would appear solid anymore. Everything would appear like, a flash of lightning, here and gone. And everything would appear to be absolutely unreliable in terms of being able to label it this or that, because it would be so quickly changing from one thing to another. So that's really what's meant by, that's kind of like the base level of illusory quality. There are deeper, more esoteric versions of illusory quality, or reality being an illusion. But in the most basic kind of relatable terms, this is what we're talking about, is just that friends become enemies, enemies become friends, comfort becomes discomfort, unfamiliar becomes familiar, easy becomes hard, hard becomes easy. And so it's more, the practicality of it is more to not allow the mind to be arrested by whatever is happening in the moment, and to tell a story about it as if it were going to persevere. So getting stuck on something like oh, I can't stand this particular scenario, or I really want to, I need to get myself out, or get rid of this particular situation. What the mind is doing is it's sort of like treating something that is absolutely temporary as if it is going to last the rest of your life. And so another way of thinking about it is when Buddhists say everything is an illusion, they're simply kind of referencing the old adage, which I think is from Arabian Nights, of this too shall pass. So we're not necessarily, trying to tell you live in the Matrix. For now, we're just trying to point out that you shouldn't let the mind rely on its assumptions about the moment, because the moment itself is unreliable. All right, Tashi Delek, thank you so much. Always sorry for the long videos. Sorry that I take so long to explain myself and explain something which I should be able to state in quick and simple terms, but I'll keep working on it. Pray for me. I love you very much. Have a good day. Tashi Delek.